details, and no doubt more details will be set out in due course.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last Tory Prime Minister was forced out after a series of dodgy dealings and failing to take responsibility for any of it. So what's this Prime Minister getting the boot for? Her plan that crashed the economy, forcing fracking on communities who don't want it? Or will she do the decent thing and go and call a general election?
I have taken responsibility and I have made the right decision in the interests of the country's economic stability.
Steve Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every single member in this House will have constituents waiting for treatment within the COVID backlog. The Health Secretary's priorities are absolutely right, including her B for tackling the backlogs. Can the Prime Minister reassure me that the government is committed to the series of elective hubs that we've promised, including at the Royal Hampshire County Hospital in my Winchester constituency?
Prime Minister.
Well, my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, has set out her plans to deliver on dealing with the COVID backlog, and she will continue to work on that and make sure we deal with what was a massive pandemic, creating a backlog. We will deal with it.
Bernie Gardner.
Since the mini-budget, thousands of my constituents have been in mental anguish and despair. I recognise that the Honourable Lady has faced a week of mental anguish and despair herself. She has had people angry with her, she's had people who have mocked her. But having had that experience, what will she now do to improve the health care, the mental health care for people in this country, so that the anguish that they face in the coming months is properly responded to and dealt with?
My right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, has set out a very clear plan of how we're going to deal with the backlog created by COVID, how we're going to make sure people get timely GP appointments, and how we're going to improve on the services in our hospitals, including mental health services.
Waitley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government is facing tough choices, but people living with dementia face unlimited care costs, and that is not a choice. Can my right honourable friend assure me that she is committed to social care reform to end that worry and relieve pressure on the NHS?
Prime Minister.
Yes, we are committed to social care reform. We do need to deal with those issues.
Greasy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always better to see a Prime Minister at her desk rather than underneath it. And now that she's here, I wonder if she could tell us why next week this House will be discussing legislation that will abolish vital protections on pension payouts. It will abolish our right to watch the Olympics free of charge and airline consumer laws. How is any of the retained law bill in the British interest?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think we have yet another example of somebody who doesn't want to support the British public's decision to leave the European Union in 2016. Isn't it quite incredible, Mr. Speaker, that 6 years after people voted to leave the European Union, there are people who object to taking EU law off our statute books. Now, I'm a Democrat. I respect what British people voted for. I suggest the Right Honourable Lady does the same.
Richard Graham.
Mr. Speaker, 30 years ago, the Westminster Foundation for Democracy was created out of the war in Bosnia so that democracies could flourish and freedom and prosperity come with it. This evening, in your rooms, we celebrate that anniversary by hearing directly from our country representative in Ukraine, from the chair of the Taiwanese Foreign Affairs Committee and the leader of the opposition in Uganda, a good example of the range of contacts that this great cross-party body funded by government is working with. Can I ask the Prime Minister if she agrees that this is a vital contribution by our government and our people to democracy around the world, and will she encourage members around the House to join us this evening?
Prime Minister.
Well, the Westminster Foundation for Democracy does a fantastic job, and I think we know from what has happened in Ukraine, the appalling war perpetrated by Vladimir Putin, just how precious democracy is and how much we need to do to work with our friends and allies to protect democracy around the world. And I do encourage colleagues from all sides of the House to attend the event tonight.
That now completes Prime Minister's questions. I'll let the House clear. Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I would like to point out the British Sign Language